Next, we're going to try to generalize the idea of solving quadratic equations. And we can begin by defining a general quadratic equation. So the general form would be ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. So that's the most general way of depicting a quadratic equation. And the letters A, B, and C represent fixed constants. It's typical in math to use letters at the beginning of the alphabet to represent fixed numbers, and letters at the end of the alphabet represent variables or things we're solving for. So if we can solve this equation, then we'll have a way of solving any quadratic equation by just replacing A, B, and C with specific numbers. That's the idea. So if you were to solve this problem by completing the square, and that's another reason I like to show completing the square, because I like for you to see where this comes from. If we ran through the same process of completing the square on this general equation, then we get a formula, which is called the quadratic formula. So we'll write that out. The quadratic formula is x equals to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So notice the line goes underneath the entire numerator. I've seen a lot of students only write part way. I don't know if they're lazy or if they're forgetting something, misunderstanding something, but if you're kind of lazy about your writing, you can run into big trouble that way. The line extends underneath the entire fraction, under all those terms. All right, so here's the formula. And if you were in a college algebra class, then we would probably just go ahead and do completing the square up here and solve for that. All right, but I'll spare that for you. I do recommend memorizing this, and it's not a problem to memorize. All you do is every time you use it, write it down first, and once you've written it down about 8 or 10 times, you'll have it memorized. You don't even have to try. So this is particularly useful if you have to take more math classes. If you take a college algebra class, then we expect you to have seen the quadratic formula, and you'll certainly get to use it. Same with calculus. We don't even review it in calculus. We just expect you to come in there knowing it. So, all right. So let's do a quick problem with this. Suppose that we're going to solve. And I like to print this. Solve. 2x squared minus 3x minus 7 equals to 0. All right, well, comparing it with up here, 2 is equal to a, so a equals to 2. B is the number in front of x, so it's negative 3. B is negative 3. And c is negative 7. So it's a good idea to write out your constants before you plug them in. Here's the formula. So the answer would be x equals to negative b, so that's negative of negative 3, plus or minus the square root of negative 3 squared, and notice I use parentheses here, minus 4 times a is equal to 2, and times c, 4 times ac, so that's minus 4 times a times c, negative 7. And everything is divided by 2a, so that's 2 times 2. So it's very nice to have this formula because we can just plug numbers in, but we still have to simplify it. There are places where people screw this up. This is a negative times a negative, and so we have 2 negatives will cancel. That makes everything a plus in that part. And I see I need to make room here to write. So also, the negatives canceling would be over here. Those 2 negatives cancel. So let's see what we got. We have x equals to positive 3 plus or minus And this is 9, positive 9, because we're squaring the negative. So 9, and then plus, looks like 56, plus 56, divided by 4. And so my final answer, and let's finish simplifying this, x equals to 3 plus or minus the square root of 65 divided by 4. So I combine those numbers up there. The square root of 65 cannot be simplified in any way, so there's nothing we can do besides write the answer out. It's done. Except that sometimes it's kind of nice to write out both answers. I regard this as optional, but I like to do it because I want to emphasize that there are two answers here. So one is 3 plus the square root of 65 over 4, and the other is 3 minus the square root of 65 over 4. I don't want people to forget that this means two separate answers. All right, so there we go. There's the quadratic formula.